Good morning. The word for you today. Today is Thursday, January 9th, and our devotion is the first part of a series that I feel personally called out by. Um, it's something that I need to work on. It's the first part of a series called See Yourself as Valuable. Today, we're going to be reading from the book of Luke, chapter 12. And this is a conversation between Jesus and his disciples. Now, what's important to note is that Jesus is using a rhetorical strategy. Basically, fancy words for Jesus is making an argument. He's making a case for a certain view about God. And what he's doing is called a call of a Homer argument. That's a real technical term. All it means is light and heavy. What this argument does, is it says, if something happens, if God does this, then how much more likely is God going to do that? And you may be asking, okay, I don't really understand what that means. Well, here's an example right in this verse. We'll actually start with verse 24, which Jesus is saying to his disciples, "Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them." So there's our first part of the argument. This example, the ravens don't do anything. They don't sow or reap, which, if we remember, that is what God commands the first human to do, to sow and reap the fields. So if the ravens don't even do that, and yet God provides for them. So then we get to the next part of the argument of how much more value are you than the birds? So if God blesses and prospers the ravens who don't manage his creation, how much more is he going to bless and prosper and care for the people whom he has made in his own image? And then we'll go down to verse 27. And it says, "Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, and yet I tell you, even Solomon, in all of his glory, was not clothed like one of these." So there's our first part of it again. "But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you?" The argument is saying this small act where we see God's provision, it is just a small piece of the bigger piece of God's grace, mercy, wisdom, justice, goodness. Insert attribute here. If God is so loving that he cares for ravens and for lilies, then how much more loving is he to humans? There are actually times when it goes on for weeks, that I feel completely hopeless. And it's not that something bad has happened. It's not that I've messed up or gotten in trouble. It's just that for some reason, my brain starts telling me that I'm not worth it. There are days that I question why God made me. And it's on those days that I feel the most disconnected, the most far I can be from God. However, it is also on those days that I am reminded that God, when his people were desperate in bondage, when his people were enslaved in Egypt, God heard them and brought them out of Egypt and brought them to a land that prospered with milk and honey. That when Jesus heard about Lazarus's death and Mary and Martha's suffering because of it, Jesus wept over it. Jesus wept for them. If that is who our God is, and it is, that's who our God is. On the days when I am like Mary and Martha, so angry and sad and feeling completely disconnected from God, those are the days that God is most present in the way of those are the days when God's presence is most obvious. In retrospect, this is a hard one for me. This is a hard devotional for me to talk about because it feels disingenuous almost, because there are a lot of days I don't see myself as valuable. But I believe that I am made in the image of God. I believe you, watching, are made in the image of our Lord. And people don't make statues of things that aren't important. People don't render paintings of people if there's not something to paint. In the same way, God doesn't just make people for the fun of it. God makes people because God has a purpose for them, has a reason that God made them. You are valuable. You're not perfect. You're not the most powerful person in the world, but you are valuable. God says that. Jesus says that. And I hope that when you are in our community, when you participate with Within Hills, that you hear us say that to you. Have a great day.